The small hall was buzzing with people chatting and laughing, waiting for the evening to begin. Everyone had come for the annual community talent show, a local tradition where musicians, dancers, and even a few comedians would perform. The air was filled with a mix of excitement and casual chatter, the smell of popcorn and fresh coffee drifting from the small stand at the back of the room. She sat quietly at the corner, hands folded on her lap, feeling slightly out of place. She wasn't used to crowds, and big gatherings always made her feel a bit nervous. Music had always been her world, but she preferred it in small rooms with familiar faces. She glanced toward the stage, where a shiny black piano sat waiting under a single spotlight. She had played in small recitals before in music schools and tiny coffee shops, but this was different. The piano looked intimidating in the middle of the room, and the eyes of the audience were like invisible spotlights, following everyone as they moved. She loved playing, but performing under pressure was something she rarely did. The thought made her stomach twist slightly, but there was also a tiny spark of excitement. There was something magical about music that could erase fear, if only for a little while. Nearby, a group of young adults were joking and nudging each other. They had seen her quietly observing the setup and decided, in their usual teasing way, to pick on her. "Hey, you play the piano, right? Bet you can't play something really hard for everyone here," one of them said, half smiling, half laughing. The tone was light, but there was a hint of challenge in the words. It was meant as a joke, something that would make everyone laugh, including her. She felt her face heat up. Her first instinct was to smile politely and shrug, but the words hung in the air. Could she do it? Could she take this casual challenge seriously? She tried to ignore them, turning her attention back to the piano. But the laughter from the group echoed in her mind. It wasn't cruel, but it wasn't encouraging either. She knew she could play, better than many around her, but this was different. This was a live audience, eyes staring, waiting for entertainment, not just listening to her as a friend. She hesitated, thinking of all the possible ways she could embarrass herself. What if she hit a wrong note? What if her hands trembled? The room seemed suddenly bigger and colder, filled with people whose expressions she could barely read. Despite the nerves, a part of her felt a flicker of determination. This was a chance, however small, to show herself what she was capable of. She took a deep breath and slowly walked toward the stage. The floor felt solid beneath her feet, but her heart beat in a rapid rhythm, faster than any musical piece she had ever played. As she approached the piano, the group that had teased her looked on, a mixture of amusement and curiosity in their eyes. She didn't acknowledge them. Instead, she focused on the instrument in front of her. It was a beautiful piano, polished and smooth, reflecting the soft lights above. Her fingers itched to touch the keys, to make music, to turn the tension in the room into something beautiful. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it slightly, careful to find the perfect height. She placed her hands gently on the keys, letting them rest for a moment. The room was silent now, as the audience noticed her presence on the stage. Whispers died down, and all eyes seemed to follow her movements. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, feeling the weight of the challenge and the anticipation. The piano smelled faintly of polished wood, a comforting, familiar scent. It reminded her of quiet afternoons spent practicing alone, hours of dedication that no one else had seen. Her fingers hovered over the keys, feeling the smoothness and the potential for sound that lay beneath them. She began with a soft scale, just to warm up, letting the first notes resonate gently through the hall. Each sound was a small victory over the nervousness curling in her stomach. She felt herself relax slightly, the music taking over her mind and body, pushing aside the fear. She remembered all those late nights when she had practiced difficult pieces, fingers aching, eyes tired, heart full of hope. That preparation, she realized, was the reason she could even consider performing now. Some people in the audience started whispering to each other, curiosity replacing doubt. The group that had teased her exchanged glances, noticing her seriousness. The tension in the room was palpable, but instead of being paralyzing, it became something she could channel into her music. She decided to play a piece she had been practicing secretly, a complex composition that required focus, skill, and emotion. It was a piece she loved, one that told a story without words, and she hoped it would speak to the audience as well. The first few notes were cautious, but steady. She allowed herself to feel each note, to let the sound guide her. Her hands moved with precision, the music flowing through her fingers. The audience, at first hesitant, began to listen. Some leaned forward, trying to catch every nuance, every subtle shift in tempo and tone. The teasing group fell silent, their amusement replaced by surprise. The room seemed to shrink around her, and all that existed was her, the piano, and the music. She realized that for the first time, she wasn't just playing. She was communicating, telling a story, sharing a piece of herself with strangers. She remembered the moments that led her here, the countless hours of practice that often went unnoticed, the sacrifices she had made for her passion. Those memories fueled her confidence. She felt the music in her bones, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm. The audience's eyes were on her, but instead of fear, she felt a quiet strength. This was her moment, unexpected and challenging, yet full of possibility. Time seemed to stretch. Each note carried weight. Each chord was a declaration that she belonged here. She played with emotion, letting the soft and loud passages reflect her own journey. The doubt, the perseverance, the quiet determination. She noticed a few faces in the audience that looked particularly engaged, eyes wide with surprise, mouths slightly open in admiration. She felt a spark of joy, realizing that her music was reaching them, touching them in a way she had hoped but never expected in such a setting. As she continued, the nervousness that had gripped her at the start faded completely. Her fingers danced across the keys, moving faster, more confidently, yet with precision. She was no longer thinking about the challenge as a joke or about the audience's expectations. She was immersed in the music, creating a space where nothing else existed. The group that had teased her now watched in silence, perhaps realizing that they had underestimated her talent. Every note she played carried her story. The quiet girl who loved music, the hours of practice, the courage to step onto a stage even when it seemed absurd. The hall was filled with sound, rich and full, echoing off the walls. She could feel the energy of the audience, their surprise and admiration blending into her performance. She smiled faintly to herself, a secret acknowledgement that she was doing it. She was proving, not to them but to herself, that she could rise to the occasion. Each key pressed was a small victory over doubt, and each pause between notes was a breath of triumph. When she finally lifted her hands from the keys after finishing the first section, there was a brief silence. The audience had been captivated, unsure how to react at first. Then, slowly, whispers turned into murmurs of appreciation. Eyes widened in admiration. She sat back for a moment, letting the last echo of the notes linger in the air, feeling a sense of calm triumph. The challenge that had begun as a joke had turned into an unexpected opportunity to shine. She realized that this night, this audience, and this piano had given her a chance to step into a role she had only dreamed of, if only in her quiet moments of practice. She knew the journey wasn't over, but this first step had already changed something inside her. Backstage, she took a deep breath and tried to steady her racing heart. The first few notes she had played were cautious but correct, and for a moment, the applause and soft murmurs from the audience felt almost unreal. She had stepped into the challenge, and it had not ended in disaster. Still, she knew the difficult part was yet to come. The piece she had chosen to play was not simple. It required speed, accuracy, and emotion. It would test her skills, patience, and focus. She closed her eyes and pictured the sheet music she had memorized, visualizing every note, every pause, and every change in tempo. Her mind raced with possibilities. Could she maintain her composure? Would her fingers move as they should? Or would the pressure make them falter? Doubts crept in, but she forced them aside, remembering the countless hours she had spent practicing alone, the late nights when her hands had ached, and the mornings when she had woken early just to play. Those moments had built her strength, her confidence, and her resilience. She had faced difficult pieces before, but never under the eyes of so many strangers. The thought of failing in front of them was terrifying, yet something deep inside pushed her forward. She approached the piano again, running her fingers lightly over the keys, feeling their smooth surface. The familiar touch brought comfort, and a small smile appeared on her face. She could do this. She had prepared for moments like this even when she didn't know it. The audience was quiet now, waiting for her to start again, some still skeptical, others curious. The whispers and laughter from the earlier joke had faded into the background, leaving only the music and her determination. Taking a deep breath, she placed her hands carefully on the keys. She started slowly, warming up with a soft melody, letting the notes flow gently through the hall. Each sound reassured her. Each chord gave her confidence. She could feel the room responding to her music, even if subtly. Eyes focused on her, faces softened, and the audience leaned in, sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Her fingers began to move faster, more confidently, as she eased into the piece she had chosen. The music had always been her voice, and now, more than ever, it needed to speak loudly and clearly. Every note carried her story. The hours of practice, the dreams, the quiet determination that had guided her through life. She felt herself becoming one with the piano, each movement perfectly synchronized with the melody in her mind. The challenge that had begun as a joke no longer mattered. It had transformed into an opportunity. The audience was witnessing something authentic, something that could not be faked or forced. She played with precision and emotion, letting the music flow naturally, building the piece slowly, with care and intensity. She remembered the people who had doubted her, including the small group that had teased her earlier. They were watching now, their expressions changing from amusement to surprise, and finally to genuine admiration. The sound of the piano filled the room, resonating in the walls, in the seats, and in the hearts of everyone listening. She felt a growing connection with the audience, realizing that the music was no longer just her own. It belonged to them as well. Each note was a bridge between her soul and theirs, a silent conversation that needed no words. The piece became more challenging, with rapid passages and intricate patterns that demanded her full attention. She felt her fingers moving almost instinctively, guided by memory and practice. Her heart raced, but it was a good kind of fear, the kind that sharpened focus and heightened awareness. She had prepared for this, and now she was fully immersed in the moment. Sweat formed on her brow, but she ignored it, concentrating on the music. She felt alive, as though the piano had unlocked a part of her that had always been waiting for such a moment. She remembered the quiet afternoons spent alone, the notes scribbled in her notebook, the corrections made over and over until perfection seemed possible. All those small, lonely moments had led her to this stage. Now, in front of a live audience, she was putting everything she had into the music, not for recognition or praise, but because it was who she was. The complexity of the piece no longer felt intimidating. It felt like a challenge meant to be met, a journey to be traveled one note at a time. The audience was captivated. Some held their breath, others smiled, and a few even closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. They were experiencing her dedication, her passion, and her talent firsthand. She felt a surge of energy from their response, a silent encouragement that propelled her forward. The group that had challenged her earlier now watched in awe, perhaps realizing that they had underestimated her. Their laughter was gone, replaced by admiration and wonder. As the music reached a particularly difficult passage, her fingers flew across the keys with precision and confidence. She felt a moment of pure exhilaration, a thrill that came from conquering fear and uncertainty. The notes were no longer just sounds. They were expressions of her inner strength, her determination, and her love for music. She could feel every chord vibrating in her chest, every melody intertwining with her heartbeat. The room seemed to shrink around her, leaving only the piano, the music, and the connection with those who were listening. She paused briefly, allowing a few notes to linger in the air, giving the audience a moment to absorb the depth of the performance. Then, without hesitation, she continued, letting the next section flow with intensity and emotion. Each measure required focus, yet she felt in control, guided by the hours of practice and the passion that had always driven her. The music told a story of fear, courage, and triumph. She could see the expressions in the audience changing, eyes widening, mouths opening slightly in surprise, hearts moved by the unexpected depth of her performance. The challenge was no longer a joke. It was a defining moment, a turning point where she proved, most importantly to herself, that she could rise above doubt and perform with excellence under pressure. Her fingers moved with speed and accuracy, executing every note as she had imagined it. She felt a sense of liberation, a release from the tension that had built up in the hall. The music had become a living thing, carrying her emotions and her story into the ears and hearts of everyone present. As she reached the final measures of the piece, she felt a mix of relief and exhilaration. The most difficult passages had been played flawlessly, and the audience was completely engaged, holding their applause in anticipation of the last note. She poured every bit of her energy and emotion into the finale, letting the sound fill the room with resonance and power. Her hands moved with confidence and grace, and when the last note rang out, there was a moment of silence, almost as if the room was catching its breath. Then, the applause began, soft at first, then louder and louder, until the hall was filled with clapping, cheers, and expressions of awe. She sat back on the bench, breathing heavily but smiling, a mixture of pride and disbelief washing over her. The audience was on their feet, some giving a standing ovation, others simply clapping and smiling with admiration. The challenge that had started as a joke had transformed into a moment of triumph, a moment where her talent, dedication, and courage shone brightly for everyone to see. She looked around the room, catching the eyes of the people who had doubted her. There was a mix of surprise, respect, and apology in their expressions. She didn't need to say anything. The music had spoken for her. It had told the story of her journey, her perseverance, and her ability to rise to the occasion. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had turned a moment of doubt into an opportunity to shine. It was a feeling she would carry with her forever, a reminder that courage and dedication could overcome even the most unexpected challenges. Backstage after the performance, she reflected on what had just happened. The nerves, the doubts, the pressure. All of it had been real, but so was her ability to meet the challenge. She realized that moments like these, although intimidating, were opportunities to grow, to discover strength within herself that she hadn't fully known before. The applause, the admiration, and the respect from the audience were wonderful, but the true victory was the confidence and pride she felt in herself. She knew that this experience would stay with her, shaping her future performances and inspiring her to embrace challenges rather than fear them. The night seemed to stretch endlessly as she remained seated at the piano, feeling the echo of the applause still vibrating in her chest. The warmth of the audience's admiration was comforting, yet there was a new challenge ahead, continuing the performance and maintaining the momentum she had built. The room was quiet now, save for soft murmurs of appreciation, giving her the perfect space to refocus. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing gently on her shoulders, but instead of fear, it brought clarity. Each note she was about to play would matter, and she was ready. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, letting her mind clear of distraction. She visualized the next section of the piece, the intricate patterns she had practiced for weeks. The complexity of the music could have been intimidating in another setting, but now, in the quiet of the hall and under the watchful eyes of the audience, it became a thrilling challenge. She was aware that everyone was waiting to see if she would falter or shine. That thought, rather than paralyzing her, ignited a focus she hadn't known she possessed. She took a deep breath and let her hands fall naturally on the keys. The first few notes were tentative but deliberate. They set the stage for the intricate passages that followed, notes flowing like water over stones, smooth yet deliberate. The audience leaned in, mesmerized, as the soft music gradually built into a richer, more complex melody. She felt the rhythm in her heart, the tempo of her own pulse matching the flow of the piece. Every chord, every scale, Every subtle pause was a conversation with the audience, a message delivered without words. She had always believed that music could communicate the deepest emotions, and tonight, she was living that belief. She glanced briefly at the audience, noticing the subtle shifts in their expressions. Some faces were relaxed, absorbed in the sound, eyes half closed, letting the music wash over them. Others were more alert, curiosity and surprise etched on their features. She could feel the energy of the room, feeding her performance, turning nerves into excitement. The initial challenge that had started as a joke was now a real, living opportunity, and she embraced it fully. As she progressed into the middle section of the piece, the tempo quickened, demanding faster movements and sharper focus. Her fingers flew over the keys, executing each note with precision, guided by memory and instinct. She felt every muscle in her hands, arms, and shoulders working in perfect harmony. This was the culmination of years of practice, each lesson, each small success and failure, converging into a performance that was uniquely hers. The audience seemed to sense the effort behind every note, leaning forward, listening intently, their breath held as if they were part of the music itself. Her thoughts drifted for a moment to the teasing group that had challenged her earlier. Their laughter had turned into silence, and she could see their expressions shift from doubt to astonishment. It was satisfying, not in a vengeful way, but as confirmation that she had exceeded expectations, even her own. The music was speaking louder than any words could, showing everyone present the dedication and talent that had remained quiet for so long. She felt a quiet pride, a recognition that all her hard work had led to this very moment. The middle section was particularly demanding, with rapid sequences and intricate chord progressions. She allowed herself to get lost in the rhythm, letting the music guide her rather than forcing each movement consciously. The connection between mind, body, and instrument became seamless. Her heart rate matched the tempo, her breathing synchronized with the flow of the melody. Each note carried intent, each chord resonated with emotion, and each pause allowed the audience to absorb the beauty and intensity of the piece. As the music built toward the climax, she felt a surge of energy and exhilaration. The technical challenge was immense, but so was the reward. Her fingers danced effortlessly, each key responding perfectly to her touch. The audience was fully engaged now, their initial skepticism replaced by awe and admiration. She noticed several people leaning forward in their seats, completely captivated, some even holding their breath, waiting for the next twist, the next flourish. The room was alive with anticipation, and she thrived in it, feeding off the energy she received. Her mind was entirely focused on the performance. She had little thought for the stage, the lights, or even the applause that had come before. Everything existed in the music, the piano, and the subtle connection with the listeners. She felt a rare clarity, a sense that this moment had always been waiting for her. The audience's reaction, though visible, became secondary to the personal triumph she was experiencing. She was not just playing. She was conquering fears, testing limits, and communicating something deeply personal. The piece demanded precision, and for a few moments, she felt every nerve in her body engaged. There was a passage where two notes had to be struck almost simultaneously, with perfect timing, and she hit them with a confidence that surprised even her. The audience noticed, some gasping quietly, some smiling in disbelief. She allowed herself a small smile as well, acknowledging the harmony between preparation and instinct. She had trained for this, but it was the present moment that made it alive, tangible, and breathtaking. The middle portion transitioned smoothly into a softer, more lyrical segment, allowing a moment of reflection. She slowed slightly, letting the notes breathe, and infused each sound with emotion, playing not just with skill but with heart. The audience seemed to exhale collectively, drawn into the intimacy of the music. She felt their connection, their shared experience, and it strengthened her resolve to continue with confidence and passion. The music had become a bridge, connecting her inner world with the hearts of strangers, and it was exhilarating. As she approached the final challenging section, her mind sharpened. This was the part that would define the performance. She could feel the anticipation of the audience, their eyes and ears fully tuned to every subtle movement. Her fingers moved with precise speed, executing complex sequences flawlessly. Each note was a testament to her dedication, every chord an expression of her perseverance. She felt alive, vibrant, and completely immersed in the music. The piano became an extension of her being, each sound a reflection of her skill, her emotion, and her courage. The challenging section flowed seamlessly into the crescendo, building tension and excitement. Her hands flew across the keys with confidence, executing every twist and turn in the music with grace and precision. The audience was captivated, some holding their breath, others leaning forward, and many with wide eyes, absorbed in the brilliance of the performance. She felt a surge of satisfaction, knowing that her preparation, her courage, and her passion had culminated in a moment that transcended fear and expectation. The climax approached, and she played with a controlled intensity, pouring all her energy and emotion into the final measures. The notes rang out, bold and clear, filling every corner of the hall with resonance. The audience was completely enraptured, responding with visible excitement and appreciation. She felt a moment of pure exhilaration, knowing that she had not only met the challenge, but had transformed it into something extraordinary. The music had become a story of courage, talent, and resilience, told without words but understood by everyone present. Finally, the last few notes floated gently through the air, softening into a serene conclusion. She let her hands rest lightly on the keys, savoring the silence that followed, the echo of the music lingering like a gentle breeze. The room remained still for a heartbeat, the audience absorbing the beauty of what they had witnessed. Then, slowly, the applause began, growing louder and louder, until the hall was filled with clapping, cheers, and expressions of admiration. She allowed herself a deep breath, a smile of quiet triumph spreading across her face. The performance had been more than just a challenge. It had been a journey of self-discovery, courage, and expression. She felt a profound sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had transformed an unexpected, joking challenge into a true artistic triumph. The audience's appreciation was gratifying, but the real reward was the realization of her own strength and potential. The music had spoken, and she had listened, creating a moment that would remain with her, a testament to the power of dedication, skill, and courage in the face of doubt. The applause from the audience echoed through the hall, surrounding her with a warmth she had never experienced before. She sat at the piano, hands hovering slightly above the keys, letting the sound of her final notes fade into silence. Her chest was still heaving, not from exhaustion, but from the thrill of what she had just accomplished. For a moment, she allowed herself to absorb the sheer reality of the situation. What had started as a joke, a casual dare meant to make her feel foolish, had transformed into a breathtaking display of talent and courage. The faces in the crowd, their astonishment and respect, filled her with an unexpected sense of pride. Slowly, she rose from the bench and turned toward the audience, giving them a modest nod. She wasn't used to public recognition, and yet this moment felt different. It wasn't about ego or attention. It was about having proven to herself that she could rise to the occasion. She noticed the group that had teased her earlier, their laughter replaced by a mixture of surprise and admiration. Some exchanged whispers, clearly impressed, and she felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that they had witnessed her transformation. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about the journey she had taken to reach this moment. She stepped off the stage and moved backstage, where the lights were softer and the world felt quieter. She leaned against the wall, taking deep, steadying breaths, feeling the adrenaline slowly ebb from her body. Her hands tingled from the intensity of the performance, but the sensation was invigorating, a reminder that she had poured everything she had into the music. In the stillness, she reflected on how far she had come. Each note she had played had been a testament to hours of practice, sacrifice, and dedication that no one outside her quiet world had ever witnessed. A few familiar faces approached her, smiling and offering congratulations. Their words were kind, but they couldn't fully capture the experience she had just lived. She thanked them politely, her mind still replaying the music, the rhythm, and the emotions that had carried her through the performance. She thought about the nervousness she had felt before stepping onto the stage, how it had almost stopped her from accepting the challenge. And yet now, standing here after having faced that fear, she felt stronger, more capable than ever. The group that had challenged her earlier lingered nearby, unsure of how to respond. One of them finally spoke, their voice a mix of hesitation and admiration. "I didn't expect. That was incredible," they said, clearly surprised. She offered a small smile in return, acknowledging their words without dwelling on the past teasing. The moment had shifted. There was no need for embarrassment or resentment. The music had spoken for itself, and it had made a statement far more powerful than any words could. She wandered back into the main hall, where the audience was beginning to disperse. People were still talking quietly among themselves, their expressions filled with wonder and excitement. She caught snippets of conversations praising her skill, her courage, and the emotional depth of her performance. Each comment was a tiny affirmation, a reminder that she had not only met the challenge but had created something beautiful in the process. The laughter that had once signaled doubt was now replaced by awe, and she felt the satisfaction of turning a casual jest into a meaningful accomplishment. Walking through the hall, she noticed a few children who had been watching the performance with wide eyes. Their faces lit up as they saw her, and one of them shyly asked if they could play the piano like that someday. She smiled, kneeling slightly to speak to them at eye level. "It takes practice and patience," she said gently, "but anyone who loves music can play. Just keep trying, and you'll be surprised at what you can do." Their eyes sparkled with inspiration, and she realized that her performance had already created ripples beyond her own achievement. It was more than a personal victory. It was a moment that could ignite passion and confidence in others. She moved toward the exit, the quiet buzz of conversation following her as she passed. The cool air outside was a welcome contrast to the warmth and intensity of the hall. She took a deep breath, letting the night sky and the crisp air fill her senses. The experience was overwhelming, yet it felt complete. She had faced doubt, fear, and challenge, and she had emerged with a sense of accomplishment that was both humbling and empowering. Every step she took felt lighter, more confident, as if the weight of uncertainty had been lifted from her shoulders. As she walked home, she replayed the performance in her mind, note by note, moment by moment. She thought about the initial hesitation, the nervousness, and the eventual flow of music that had taken over her body and mind. She recalled the expressions on the audience's faces, the gasps, the wide eyes, and the smiles. She understood that music had the power to connect people in a way words could not, and that her courage had made that connection possible. She had transformed a fleeting, joking challenge into a lasting memory, a moment of artistry and authenticity. Later, when she finally sat alone in her room, the events of the evening continued to settle in her mind. She thought about the challenges she had faced in her life, both big and small, and how this performance reflected her ability to rise above them. She felt a sense of gratitude for the music, for the piano, and for the moments of practice that had prepared her for this night. Her hands rested on her lap, still tingling slightly from the intensity of the performance, and she smiled quietly to herself. She had discovered a strength she had not fully realized, a resilience that would carry her forward in ways she had never imagined. Her thoughts wandered to the future, to the possibilities that now seemed more tangible. The audience had seen her talent, and more importantly, she had seen it in herself. She felt a renewed determination to continue pursuing her passion, to embrace opportunities that came her way, and to approach challenges with confidence rather than fear. The evening had shown her that unexpected situations could become moments of triumph if approached with courage, dedication, and authenticity. The applause, the astonished faces, and the quiet moments of reflection all merged into a profound understanding. She had grown not just as a musician, but as a person. The challenge that had begun as a casual joke had revealed her inner strength, her ability to rise to the occasion, and her capacity to inspire others through her art. She realized that fear and doubt were not obstacles but invitations to discover hidden potential, and that the true reward of any challenge lay in the journey itself. As she finally lay down to rest, the notes of her performance seemed to linger in her mind, a gentle echo of triumph and growth. She felt a sense of peace and fulfillment, knowing that she had embraced the moment fully and given her best. The experience would stay with her, a reminder of the power of courage, dedication, and passion. It was a story she would carry quietly in her heart, a testament to the beauty of rising above doubt and seizing unexpected opportunities with grace and skill. The following days were filled with a quiet, almost surreal satisfaction. The memory of the performance lingered in her mind, like the last note of a song that refuses to fade completely. She walked through her usual routine with a new sense of confidence. People she met at the market or in the streets occasionally mentioned the performance, their words full of admiration and curiosity. Some had seen the video that a friend had captured, while others had been in the audience themselves. Each compliment, each acknowledgement, reminded her of what she had accomplished and how far she had come from that moment of nervous hesitation. Even among friends and family, her performance became a topic of conversation. They praised her talent, yes, but more importantly, they recognized the courage it had taken to rise to a challenge that had begun as a joke. She had faced doubt, pressure, and the fear of failure, and yet she had transformed it into a moment of beauty and inspiration. Sitting quietly at home, she thought back to the stage, the gleaming piano, and the faces of the audience, and she realized how much that night had changed her. It wasn't just about playing well. It was about understanding her own strength and her ability to connect with people through her music. The group that had teased her initially had reached out, some apologizing for their earlier mockery, others expressing genuine amazement at her performance. She accepted their words gracefully, choosing not to dwell on the initial challenge. The music had already spoken louder than any words could. They were not her concern anymore. Her focus was on the journey ahead. The event had opened doors she hadn't imagined, not only in terms of recognition but also in terms of self-belief. She felt a quiet determination to continue pursuing music, not for fame or praise, but because it was who she was. In the following weeks, she began practicing with renewed intensity, inspired by the thought that her performance had resonated with people she had never met before. Each session at the piano was more deliberate, more thoughtful, and yet filled with joy. She experimented with different pieces, some simple, some challenging, exploring emotions she hadn't fully expressed before. The challenge that had once terrified her now felt like a gift, a reminder that stepping into the unknown could lead to extraordinary experiences. Her hands, once nervous and tentative, moved with precision and confidence, guided by practice and passion. She also noticed a change in how she approached opportunities. Invitations to perform at small gatherings, local events, and even music workshops began to appear. She accepted them with careful consideration, no longer shying away from the spotlight, but also not seeking it blindly. Each opportunity became a chance to grow, to share her music, and to challenge herself in new ways. She remembered the fear she had felt when asked to perform as a joke, and she knew that the courage she had found that night would guide her through future challenges. Her music began to inspire others in ways she had never anticipated. Young students and aspiring musicians approached her, eager to learn, to hear her story, and to be encouraged by her journey. She found herself offering advice, guidance, and gentle encouragement, sharing the lessons she had learned from countless hours of practice, the importance of persistence, and the power of believing in oneself. She discovered that her performance had created ripples far beyond the stage, influencing people who were seeking courage and inspiration in their own lives. Despite the growing attention, she remained grounded, focused on the music itself rather than the accolades. Each day brought new challenges and new lessons. She learned to embrace mistakes as part of the process, to find beauty in imperfection, and to continue pushing herself beyond comfort zones. The memory of the night she had been challenged as a joke remained vivid, a touchstone that reminded her that fear could be transformed into triumph. She carried that memory like a quiet treasure, drawing strength from it whenever she faced doubt or uncertainty. There were moments of reflection, 2 quiet evenings when she would sit at the piano alone, replaying the performance in her mind, thinking about every note, every chord, and every pause. She remembered the anticipation, the nerves, and the exhilaration of the audience's reaction. She realized that the experience had taught her more than technique or skill. It had taught her resilience, the value of preparation, and the importance of embracing challenges. Music had become more than a hobby or a passion. It had become a way to connect, to communicate, and to grow as a person. Her confidence continued to expand, not arrogantly, but quietly and steadily. She began tackling more challenging pieces, exploring styles and compositions she had once thought beyond her reach. Each successful performance reinforced her belief that dedication, courage, and persistence could overcome fear. She also discovered a new sense of empathy for those facing their own moments of doubt. She understood the weight of expectations, the sting of skepticism, and the triumph of unexpected success. Her experiences allowed her to connect with others on a deeper level, sharing not only music but understanding and encouragement. One evening, she was invited to perform at a community gathering, this time not as a challenge, but as a respected musician. The room was filled with familiar faces and new ones, and she felt a serene confidence as she approached the piano. The memory of being challenged as a joke surfaced briefly, not as fear, but as a reminder of how far she had come. She played with grace, emotion, and skill, knowing that the journey had shaped her in ways she could never have imagined. The audience listened intently, captivated by the story her music told, a story of courage, growth, and determination. After the performance, people approached her with smiles, compliments, and heartfelt thanks. She realized that her music had become a bridge, connecting her own experiences with the emotions and journeys of others. She had transformed a moment of doubt into inspiration, and the effect rippled outward, touching lives she might never fully know. Each encounter reinforced the lesson that talent, when combined with courage and perseverance, could create profound impact. She felt a sense of purpose, knowing that her journey was not just about personal achievement, but about the ability to inspire, encourage, and uplift through art. Looking back, she understood that the challenge as a joke had been a turning point. It had pushed her to confront fear, to embrace opportunity, and to discover a strength she hadn't fully recognized. The experience shaped her approach to music and life, instilling resilience, confidence, and an understanding of the value of dedication. She knew that future challenges would come, and she welcomed them, armed with the knowledge that even unexpected moments could become extraordinary opportunities. She had proven to herself that courage and preparation could turn doubt into triumph, and that even a casual joke could become a catalyst for growth. As the days passed, she continued to play, to teach, and to inspire, carrying the lessons of that night with her in every note, every performance, and every encounter. The piano became not only an instrument but a companion, a medium through which she expressed her journey, her emotions, and her resilience. The laughter that had once been aimed at her now felt distant, replaced by the memory of applause, admiration, and the quiet satisfaction of having risen above doubt. She knew that the impact of that night would last a lifetime, shaping not only her music but her character, her confidence, and her outlook on life. In quiet moments, she reflected on the journey, understanding that the story of her performance was more than just a tale of talent. It was a story of courage in the face of doubt, of perseverance through challenges, and of the transformative power of passion and dedication. She knew that the audience had been part of the story, but so had every solitary hour of practice, every note repeated, every moment of quiet determination. The performance had been a bridge between her inner world and the wider world, and she embraced the responsibility and opportunity that came with that connection. As she looked forward to future performances, she carried with her the knowledge that fear could be faced, challenges could be overcome, and ordinary moments could become extraordinary. Her journey had started with a simple, joking challenge, and it had led to a discovery of self, a celebration of talent, and an understanding of the impact one person could have through courage and dedication. She smiled quietly to herself, knowing that the story of that night would remain a source of inspiration, a reminder that even in unexpected circumstances, greatness could emerge, and that the true measure of success was not just in applause, but in the growth and confidence it brought to her own life and the lives of others.